on board book real fast while Chris is getting up our flag. All right. So I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Greater Albany Public Schools Board of Directors, special meeting on December 7th, 2020 at 7 p.m. If you'll all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chris. All right. I'm going to lead in board book. There's not a ton of information there, but there's a few things. Let me see. Yeah. All right. So to start with, this is, again, tonight is a special board meeting that we have scheduled outside of our normal scheduled meetings to appoint a new board director and to finish out our board goal planning for the remainder of the year. First, I wanted to thank everyone who had submitted a letter of interest to the board for the vacant board director position. I know many of you are listening tonight, and we greatly appreciate all of the interest, and specifically for the fact that we know you would have been or would be volunteering your time in this capacity in order to help with the oversight of Greater Albany Public Schools. And we had 11 folks initially submit letters of interest, which was a great number of folks to see. So we appreciate that very much. The vacancy is one of our at-large board positions due to the recent resignation of Pat Eastman. It will be filled through an appointment process that the current board of directors is going to go through tonight. The appointee will fill the duration of the vacant 4-year term, which will end on the end of June 2021. So basically 6.5 months, continuing on here. The position is up then for re-election in May of 2021, and the newly elected board member, board director will transition into the position on July 1st of 2021. At this time, all of our gaps zones are represented by each of the within the 4 existing board directors. Before appointing, the board had requested the letters of interest. Board directors have had those letters of interest for the past week and have reviewed them independently. There's been no discussion about the letters or the candidates among the board directors up to this point. Today will be our first opportunity. Board directors previously agreed to a list of attributes that we would consider in our independent review of the letters of interest. They are not all inclusive or things that we expected every candidate to meet all of, but were a list of considerations we felt were important to the board. I encourage at this time our board directors to consider all aspects of our board work, as well as what areas will assist us in having the most well-rounded group of directors. With all of that said about the process to date, I want to review the process that we're going to go through tonight to ensure everyone understands before we get started. And then I'll ask if there's any questions at the end. There is a slight difference in this, I think, compared to what was sent out to the folks that expressed or submitted letters of interest. So I also just wanted to clarify what tonight was going to look like. So the board chair will draw names and go in order, asking if that director has a motion they would like to make. If that director wants to make a motion, they can do so, or they can pass, and then we will go to the next board director selected to make a motion. And just to clarify right now, I have an empty mug and I have 3, just so you all know, that I legitimately have an Eric and a Jen and a Michael, if you can see those, and I will be putting them in this little cup here, and we'll fling them around and we'll figure out what order we go in. So they're in here for later. Once the motion is accepted by the board chair, the board will collectively discuss that candidate, keeping the discussion to only the reasons they feel a candidate is a good choice for the appointment. You may discuss whether that candidate is a second or third choice for you and why that might be the case. We always, as always, want to follow our policy AC, which is the non-discrimination policy, and refrain from making any references to issues of race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity, national or ethnic origin, marital status, age, mental or physical disability, pregnancy, familial status, economic status, or veteran status. We will then vote whether we accept that candidate as the individual the board would like to appoint. If this is not your first choice, then you would say nay, so that we can continue through the nomination process. If the vote is 3-1 or 4-0 in favor of the candidate, the motion will pass. If any other combination of votes come in, the motion does not pass. A candidate may be put forward in a motion more than once, and this process will continue until there is a passed motion. Not all candidates who submitted letters of interest will be put forward for motion or discussed. And then once a motion is passed, we will bring the candidate into our meeting and proceed with the oath of office. That will happen after a break. So we're going to take a quick break before we actually go through the oath and let Chris work with getting that person involved in our meeting. And then the board will continue with the remainder of our meeting. After that, we'll be discussing our board goals. So one of the things that we mentioned earlier, well, had not mentioned earlier probably, is that our 2 student board directors did not have the opportunity, I don't believe, to review the letters of interest. And so we won't necessarily be asking, although their vote is not typically one registered in the formal vote, we won't necessarily be asking for their vote in tonight's election, but we were curious if we could talk about what their interests are and what they feel like would be important for us to consider as we're going through this board selection process. And if it would help you, I can read to you some of the things that we as board members had already talked about at a previous meeting. Do you want me to do that first? Okay, let me grab those really quick. What I did with it now.
I have it in front of me, Kim.
Do you, Chris? You're so good. I had it right here, and now I'm thinking I have misplaced it somehow. Either that or it's on the back of one of my notes here. Yeah, if you got it, that would be great.
This is, it's Lisa.
Oh, Lisa, I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. So in the email for the board appointment and board goals, attached were the 11 letters, and it also said, please review using the following information to guide reviews of the candidates. And those things included the best person to represent the board of directors in Greater Albany Public Schools, a student-centered focus, knowledge of the district and the board itself, knowledge of current issues and trends in education, experience with Greater Albany Public Schools, any other public service or boardsmanship, advocacy or ambassador for education, underrepresented needs, geographical diversity, etc., community relations, district-wide and all school focus, and budget knowledge.
So I'm sure you caught all of those. And if you need us to go through them again, we can do that. Let's start with Esperanza. Do you have some thoughts as to what you would be interested in seeing in one of our new board members?
The only thing I could really think of is just having relationships with the students and like maybe having a close knowledge of what some students might need and things like that. But I would honestly think you guys have most things covered.
Okay, thank you.
I would totally agree with Esperanza. The student-centered part would probably be the biggest part for me, to not only that they would listen to the students, but they would listen and then take action would be something big for me.
Great. All right. Any other questions from the board directors before we start the process? Did I cover everything? I had to make notes for myself because otherwise I wasn't sure I would, but I think we got it all. We're good? Okay. So in getting us started here, going to go into my handy dandy little cup over here. I know, I couldn't figure out another way, and I figured if we all just did this, we'd be all throwing stuff out all at the same time. So first is Michael. So Michael, it is to you if you're interested in making a motion, or you are welcome to pass that opportunity on to the next person.
Well, understanding how you laid things out, I guess I would make a motion to appoint Lyle Utt, but I want to speak about it. Do I get the first chance to speak about it, or?
Yep. Feel free. So let me do this. There's a motion on the table to appoint Lyle Utt for the vacant board director position. And so we will have discussion, and I will go round robin and let folks do that. So go ahead, Michael, you can start.
Yeah. So Lyle, you all know, his letter was short and sweet. We all know he was a 2-term, 8 years on the board, and my thinking for nominating, now let me clear, I kind of ranked folks into different tiers, and he's not my first choice, but I think it is fair. I wanted to kick it off because in terms of a if one of the things we're looking for is a board member who can come right on, I'm sure he is still knowledgeable of current issues in education, the current challenges that we face, though he hasn't been around during COVID times. I think everything else. I remember him. I followed the board at the time when he was on the board. I really have no problem with him. I think he was student focused. I think he had kids in the district. I'm just offering it just to see what the other board members want. If you're looking for someone who I have no doubt could come right on and understand the district, understand what it means to be a board member, could represent the district, understands the budget. That's why I'm offering the motion for Lyle Utt.
Okay. Let's go Director Ward.
Lyle was not my first choice either, but Director Thompson makes very good points about him, and that he more than any of the other candidates, he definitely knows the workings of the board and the workings of the district, and it is true that he would come up to speed quite quickly.
Okay. And Director Aganaga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no comments at this time.
Okay. The only thing I will add at this point is that I did not also have Lyle as my top choices, but I agree that he does have the history and would make it would make it an easy case for us to pull him in, having had the history working on the board and being able to get us through that 6.5 month period of time. So that's the only other thing I would add. Did anyone else have a go back they wanted to add at all at this point before voting? Okay. I will go in the same order just for this motion. So Vice Chair Thompson, how do you vote?
Nay.
Okay. Director Ward.
Nay.
Okay. Director Aganaga.
Nay.
And I also vote nay this first time. So this motion has not passed. Okay. Going to my jar here. Apologize. Okay. Next up is Jen.
Thank you, Chair Butzner. And I'm sorry, my voice is kind of gravelly tonight. Well, I just first want to say how grateful I am to everybody who applied. I thought we had 11 candidates and all strong. As I read through them, I felt like every one of them would bring something to the board. And I felt like the student focus was strong in all of the letters. And, you know, I'm not going to say that it restores my faith in humanity because I haven't lost my faith in humanity, but it's just really at a time where it's difficult. It was really rewarding to look through all of these letters and to see the willingness of our fellow community members to give a sizable chunk of their time to service to our community, but especially to our kids. So I really just appreciated the opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and nominate Justin Roach. I felt like he was a strong candidate last time around, and he continues to look strong to me. I just feel like he has experience in GAPS. He has experience on public boards, namely the City Council. He has proven himself to be an ally, I think, of many of our underrepresented groups. And I think I'm really grateful that this time around I don't think we did last time, that we had the foresight to kind of put our priorities or give ourselves a guide. I really relied on that as I was looking through the letters. I think maybe the other thing that I was thinking about was just to the extent possible, reading a letter of interest, how well, would this person be one of five? And, trying to discern what a working relationship with this person would be like. And, I think he would be a good member of our team, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the table to appoint Justin Roach, and I will go, still continuing the same order, to Director Aganaga.
I would concur with many of Director Ward's comments about Mr. Roach.
Okay, thank you. And Vice Chair Thompson.
Yeah, I agree. Justin was my number one. And, a year and however many months ago when we had those rounds, I think I said at some point, or maybe multiple points, it was a very close choice between Justin and Pat. And, that was not exaggeration. That wasn't, trying to say a nice thing. That was true. And he has only added, frankly, he's only added since then with his work with the ASAP group. So, he checks almost all the boxes that we talked about. And not only, and I think it'd be great to have a teacher, a former teacher, but he was not only a teacher, he was a leader of teachers within teachers. He just brings so much. We're just lucky that he's willing to serve our district. He already serves other districts in a way. So I would just agree with everything that Director Ward had to say. He was my top pick.
Thank you. Not sure I can add much other than I will say Justin was my number one pick as well. I think as I was looking at the letters of interest, I would agree that he touched on many of the attributes, if not all of them, at some point. And I think he's continued to, he's been consistent in being part of the education system in a variety of aspects. And I acknowledge that from his letter of interest as well as what he's continued to do. And I think this lends itself very well to what his goals are. And I very much appreciate his previous advocacy for some of the students that have had needs in all aspects, whether it be the educational needs and trying to continue summer programs for students that needed those. I think he's been an advocate for underrepresented groups in other areas as well. And with his work at OSU currently, it looks like he works with many other school districts and has, and I think that's also a benefit to us to hear sometimes what other districts in the state are doing. And I think he would bring that aspect as well. So that's, any other comments before we go through our vote on this particular one? Okay. All right, so I will start the voting again with Director Ward. Again, we are looking to motion to appoint Justin Roach.
I vote aye.
Director Aganaga. Oh, microphone, sorry.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair Thompson. Oh, we need audio also.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So we have a 4-0 unanimous decision to appoint Justin Roach. So thank you all very, very much. Again, thank you to all of the folks that expressed letters of interest. I would highly recommend, there are 3 board positions that are going to be up for re-election in May. And so there's always an opportunity there. And as well as between now and then, we would be happy to have any of those folks that are interested reaching out to the district or the board to assist in other ways. There are other committees and places where we can definitely use the volunteers and advocates for our schools. So to any of you that did not get elected tonight, we appreciate it and would encourage you to still participate in GAPS. So with that, we are going to take a short break. I know we just started, but we'll take a quick, let's go 10-minute break. So we will come back at 7:35. And I think that should give us enough time for Chris to have Justin Roach join us. And then we will go through the oath of office. And I believe he is one that was available tonight. So we should have him joining shortly. All right, thanks everyone. I see we are slowly coming back. I do have a couple of black screens. I see Justin's screen. I'm assuming we have him audio only and no video, correct? Is that why? Or
He was their video, just.
oh, okay, perfect. Then we'll hang
ago,
on.
so.
And there's one black screen that doesn't seem to have anyone's name or anything. Well, maybe. Oh, never mind. It's Director Larry. I just didn't have names popping up there, so we will wait for a few more minutes for folks.
Not sure why my camera is not working, but I'll keep trying.
Thank you. And Justin, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but I think you are the other one that we don't see video for. Can you verify for us?
I can hear you. I'm not
audio.
able to start my video.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure you had audio. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring us back from our break and continue on to our meeting. So we've had Justin Roach join us. Congratulations and welcome to the board.
Thank you so much.
Yay. Maybe jazz hands. There you
Hi,
are.
everyone.
Great. Good to see you.
It's great to be here. It's really an honor to serve with you. Thank you.
Yes. And I just want to make sure before I do the oath of office with you that I have been pronouncing your name correctly. Correct. It's Justin Roach, and I don't have to do something different before.
That's correct. Yep, you got it.
Perfect.
You got it.
All right. This is a very brief school board member of oath of office, and I will read sections and then have you repeat them after me.
Okay.
And then I believe Chris Green will go ahead, and I believe we still need to get a signed copy, so she will work with you
Okay.
after the fact to make sure that we get a signature on one of these, either electronic or physical. Right now, we've been doing a lot of electronic signatures these days. So, all right, thanks, Chris. Okay, I, Justin Roach,
I, Justin Roach,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Oregon,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Oregon,
and the policies of Greater Albany Public Schools.
and the policies of Greater Albany Public Schools.
During my term,
During my term,
I will faithfully and impartially
I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the responsibilities of the office
discharge the responsibilities of the office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
And that is going to be dated the 7th day, you don't need to repeat this, the 7th day of December, 2020. And again, we'll get a signature on that. So
Great.
again, welcome to the board.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. So that is going to move us into our next order of business. And I know, Director Roach, that you do not necessarily have access to our board book yet, but we will be displaying some things on screen so that everyone will have access. Basically, the other agenda item we had for tonight was to try to finalize our board goals for the year. We had these started earlier, and because of COVID and some of the other things, we've just not been able to get them all finalized. And so we wanted to work on that tonight, and we will have Chris Green sharing what we had from previous goals you'll see up there, and things that we're recommending for or removal and or we've already done. And we wanted to look at what we had from the prior year that we might need to carry over. And then we had a couple of suggestions for goals that we can discuss tonight and try to work on the wording of. So we're going to make this a kind of a work session. So if you have suggestions, please provide those. We'll go around and I will ask each of you at given times for your input. And we'll just have Chris taking notes, and then we'll have those put together and presented in a more final version at the board meeting on the 14th for our approval, I believe. Is that correct, Chris, that we would do the formal approval? Or are we doing a formal approval tonight?
My understanding is you guys were going to determine them and vote on them tonight.
Okay.
Place, because it is a special board meeting, so you are able to do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I will just go through the two previous goals that we had from 2019-2020. The first was furthering our understanding of diversity and inclusion by participating in training by OSBA and others as available. And then we had learn, refine, and practice boardsmanship by honoring established operating agreements and using them for our board self-assessment. I think that we have started the process of furthering our understanding of diversity and inclusion, and we've had some trainings that have started both by OSBA, and then we've had with Elaine Rector some additional local trainings, and we are continuing to expand on that as we go forward. Is that something that board members feel should carry forward in some capacity to our goals for 2020-2021? Let's start with Vice Chair Thompson and see what your comments are on that one.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe we have I think we've dedicated some work sessions coming up to that. So I think that's kind of a no-brainer for me. Yes, absolutely. Throughout 2021, I think we should continue that with that wording, further understanding diversity and inclusion. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Director Ward.
Yeah, I think it's fine to keep them. I think we have the trainings scheduled. We're committed whether we capture it in our goals or not. But I think it's fine to leave them.
Is there anything you would consider adding to how it's worded or changing the wording of maybe so that it works for the upcoming year any differently?
Maybe continuing to expand our understanding of diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
But not necessarily. I'm fine with the.
I'm going to speak out of turn just because I happen to think of it right now. And go ahead and say, I think that for me, I would like us to see something about continuing our understanding of diversity and inclusion and working to implement and ensure that our district is, I don't know what the wording would be, but is continuing to foster that environment, I think would be something I would do a little differently maybe for the next year.
So that we are not just learning, but that we are also starting to put that learning into action.
Correct.
Capture that in words somehow. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
I would like that.
Okay. Director Aganaga.
No, I agree with your comments, Madam Chair. I like the sentence that you kind of just read. But I do think before we decide on new board goals for next year, we need to measure our goals of last year and how they were effective or not effective before we can continue creating goals for next year. We've listed off several of the steps we've taken, but how they're measured, I know the district does a lot of surveying and questions and recognitions. So I believe there is further research to be done on prior year goals before we advance into next year.
So in order for us to build our goals going forward for next year, do you think those are necessary to have the results of, or is it a situation of, do we have the ability to come up with what we think our goals should be, but then we also follow through with some sort of gathering of information that or statistical data or whatever that says what we did to achieve the previous year goals?
Yes, more of the latter
Okay.
side of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you're okay with us moving forward with what our goals should be for the next year, but I think we still need to follow through with what we were able to accomplish or not. And I think it would meet the same needs as like that was what Director Ward was saying, where there may be some things that we had as a goal that are in process, expecting for us to be done and continue to do, that may not follow into an actual goal for this coming year, but is still a high priority item that we need to address and account for and document results for.
Yes, I think we need a measurement of our goals and where the end place that we want to be. But yeah, I hate then goals only come up once a year when you're setting the next year's.
And I think the challenge we have is that last year when we created the goals, we didn't actually address the measurements and what we wanted to see as an outcome from it. And so I don't know that we have that to speak to. However, I think that's a good point to go into this year's goal planning, where if we create the goals and we agree to those tonight, then maybe at one of our upcoming meetings, we discuss what the results of those goals we want to look like and how we're going to go about measuring those in the process, so that we build that in this year, because I don't think we built that in before. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to push back just a little bit. I mean, we said that we're going to further our understanding of diversity and inclusion by participating in training by OSBA and others as available. We did participate in training by OSBA, and maybe those opportunities weren't quite as available as we initially anticipated because of COVID. But I think, and one thing that came out of that then is that there is further training that we need and that we would like. And so that's what we're carrying into 2021. As far, I know we haven't gotten to our second one. I don't mean to jump ahead, but just on this issue of measurement, we said that we were, going to, use our practice of boardsmanship as part of our board self-assessment. I don't believe we did. I mean, that's the built-in measurement, is using it as part of our board self-assessment, which we didn't do. So whether we met them or not, we can discuss. But I do think we have measurements built into these.
Mm-hmm.
But measurement as a board member or as an individual? Because as individuals, we've all grown with that education that we've received. But how have we applied that to the district? How have we applied that to the superintendent's goals? Our superintendent does a very better job than we do about implementing and setting that goal base. And we're learning from her just as fast as we're learning from OSBA or anyone. But how did the board members as a body implement that goal and not just learn individually?
I think that,
well,
go ahead, Jen.
Sorry. So for the first one, the goal was to participate in the training, and we did that. I think what Kim was saying was that, a suggestion for a goal for this school year then is to go beyond participating in the training and this year to implement what we've learned. And so when we write that goal, then how are we we would want to include in that, we will implement this knowledge that we've gained through training by whatever.
Okay. Director Aganaga, I see you shaking your head. Yes, so we're good. Okay. And Director Roach, did you have additional thoughts for a goal around this topic?
I appreciate that there's a goal, the first goal being diversity and inclusion for the board. I think that's huge, and it shows the value, and that will trickle down through the district. I think action is really the key word here. Participating in training is not the strongest verb that I think the community would need right now. So I'm excited with some stronger language that would really have some effect on our students.
Agreed. Okay, so it sounds like we will keep a diversity and equity and inclusion statement. While we're on that topic, can we go ahead and at least
Chair, I hate to interrupt. It's Assistant Superintendent Harlan. I just wanted to give the students an opportunity to weigh in on the goals.
Thank you. I can't see everyone now, and so I totally forgot. I apologize. Let me see if I can get a different.
No worries. I saw them kind of nodding and you know, kind of wanting to add some things. So I just want to be sure that they have an opportunity.
Thank you. I had a very little limited view here, so I'm changing that actually. Okay, perfect. Let's go to Esperanza.
Hello. The only thing that I really like as soon as you guys started was the whole understanding of diversity and inclusion and like the participating in training. And I feel like if you were to talk about implementing it and putting it into the schools and our community around us into that, it would probably bring a lot of like, I don't know how to explain it, like goodness around our community. I feel like it's what a lot of unrepresentative students need, knowing that the teachers have their backs and everything like that. And it really is an amazing thing that you guys are doing, and I love seeing it. It's the only thing I really have to say.
Thank you. LJ?
Yeah, I love that diversity and inclusion is one of the goals right off the bat. That is super awesome. I think one of the words we might be looking for is support, to continue to understand and support diversity and inclusion in our district. So that part of like, now we know about it and now we're going to do something about it is super big for students.
Thank you.
And not to get ahead of where you might be going, Kim, but I'd appreciate maybe some input by Superintendent Goff or Assistant Superintendent Harlan on some wording here that would help us be specific in how we'd like to implement our understanding of diversity and inclusion.
Thank you. I appreciate the time, Director Ward. I too commend you on this goal and continuing to move it more deeply. I would recommend that support be measured by the expectation that you are using an equity lens through which you're applying the equity lens as you're making decisions regarding policy and budget and other matters that come before the board. That is very easily measured for you to look back through your meeting minutes to see if a pause was given within the meeting to make sure that who is advantaged and disadvantaged by the consideration before us is discussed and brought into the conversation, and would, I think, be a logical next step as we're continuing to evolve in this work.
If I may add, Director Ward and Chair Butzner, part of the work that the board has coming up it really lends itself to exactly this. And I think about the work that we're doing, looking at all of the policy review that we're working with OSBA on, and using an equity lens when we're doing that policy review. So I think that there's work that the board is engaging in that really lends itself really well. So that if we look at all of our policies to update them with the lens of commitment to an environment where belonging is the default, and how do we ensure and talk about who is advantaged or disadvantaged by the decisions and the policies that we're making, I think we actually have work planned out that is a really good match between these two things.
You had a really good word in there that I was going to write down, and then I lost it as quick as you said it, which is frustrating. So I'll have to come up with it in a second here. I'm jotting notes down as we go.
While you're taking notes, I'll just say what I liked that she said was that belonging is the default. I liked that a lot.
Okay. I'm going to throw something out there for Chris to, I know she started, it looks like putting some words down. So I'm going to give her some verbiage for us to work from based on what I heard from everyone. And please know this is not anything you should feel bad about, like not liking or wanting to do different. It's just a place for us to start. So Chris, what I have, and I will try to go through this slowly, continue to learn, continue to learn about, implement, and support diversity, equity, and inclusion in all board work and board actions. By using an equity lens, and this is where I ended, I think we need to say something about how we will either document or report that information. So by using an equity lens, and then I think we can add something about the belonging is, I didn't write down the whole thing. Belonging is.
The wording or that I use or come to mind is that we have a commitment to an environment where belonging is the default.
There you go.
Do our policies or do our, practices, do they encourage a commitment to an environment where belonging is the default?
So have a commitment
to supporting and creating an environment where belonging is the default.
Okay. So that gives us a little bit of something to go off of. I'm going to go back to Director Ward. Or let me throw this out there. Is there anyone that has something they definitely would like to throw out as a change or massaging of wording?
As far as this particular goal?
Yes.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Do we need to be clear about how we will measure this goal, or should we do our measurements in a separate discussion from the goal itself? I personally would put the goal out there as is and would then have us discuss how we're going to document and go through that process, I think, going forward.
If I may, in my experience with just using data for schools and districts in terms of goals, I would put the goals out, and then I would have metrics or measurements to say this goal, we'll know we've met this goal if we achieve this, and then specific 2 or 3 actions underneath those that you believe will get you there for each goal. And it then becomes really easy, quarterly as a board to go back and say, okay, did we do the things we said we were going to do, and are we making progress towards that measurement?
So I'm going to recommend that we do that at a separate meeting, that this meeting tonight is to approve what we feel like the goals should be. And then we can discuss at another work session our metrics, measurements, how we want to go forward with that piece. And that'll give us some time to think through those based on the goals we create tonight and have that discussion later. Does that work for everyone? Dr. Roach, go ahead.
I think that's fine. I would just also say to guide our thinking to recognize where we are in the school year and that we are halfway through it. And I mean, that's our own fault for just getting to this now. But I just think that we need to be careful about the goals that we set and the measurements that we try to meet. Because and make sure that those are achievable within the shortened time period that we have.
And I do think this particular goal as written it's just a matter of how much we think we want to do or what it is we're doing and what we're measuring needs to be reasonable for the remainder of the year. And I think we can discuss that for sure. Director Roach.
Yeah, this may totally go against what Director Ward was just saying, but my thought is to add possibly and opportunities after environment, where we could have some tangible things that we are trying to create where the community can be more involved, and we're creating that, really working on closing that opportunity gap for students.
I think that's a great addition.
It may be more tangible as we look back on it and see how we did. In terms of creating an environment is sometimes difficult to assess. Mm-hmm. But we can have some accountability there for creating opportunity.
Correct. So Chris, did you get that addition? It would be after the word environment, just add creating an environment and opportunities. I like that. Let's see, did anyone else have? I'm not seeing any hands up. Did we lose Esperanza, or am I just not seeing her on here? Oh, no, there she is. Okay. Anything else on this one? We're good with it? Okay. We're moving on. Let's see. The second one we had from previous year was learn, refine, and practice boardsmanship by honoring. Let's see, can't quite see it. Established operating agreements and using them for our board self-assessment. That we are in the process, I think, of really looking at our board policies and our and defining some of those more. And because we're in process with that, I'm not sure this needs to be a goal again. But if anyone else feels differently, let me know. I have a feeling before the end of the year anyway, we will have new policies in place and some of our other working agreements in place. And really, I think that was part of this goal, as well as just the general practicing of good boardsmanship through those agreements, and ensuring that we were doing so through a board self-assessment, which, as we mentioned before, we did not complete. So is that something folks feel like we want to keep, refine, do differently? I saw Director Aganaga say cut it out, not include it. Does anyone else have a burning desire for this to remain versus other things that we might talk about? I'm seeing no's. If anyone feels differently, let me know. You can always have a go back. What we'll do is talk about some other things we feel like maybe should be some of our goals, and we can talk about those and then see if we're where we have enough. Typically, board goals are anywhere from 2 to 3 goals. We've had 3 in the past, and I think that we want to make sure that we're reasonable with those. They're things that we can continue to do and push for improvements on. So the next 2 are suggestions that had come forward independently from board directors, and they are topics which obviously we can discuss. The first is building relationships with community, families, and staff. Okay, before I continue, Director Ward.
No, go ahead, say those and then I'll jump in.
Okay, so what we were looking at here is, I think that in light of how things have gone this year so far, with all the issues with COVID, our need to shift and adjust how education is being delivered in our community, there are, and as we all know, political ramifications to relationships right now. There's social ramifications to relationships right now. And part of, I think, our board responsibilities are, as a board, to build those relationships and ensure those relationships are healthy with our community, also with our families and with our staff. And by families, we mean students and families. And so maybe we can specify students in there as well. But we focus sometimes on 1 or 2 or, at a time. And I think we need to ensure that as a board, we're focusing on all of those relationships. 1, how we let people know what it is that we're doing and how we're doing things, which is part of that bringing on board our communications director position. And then also on continuing to work on gathering information, hearing from the community, hearing from our staff and students and families, so that we can work on those communications and relationships a little better. So that was one suggestion. The second was, oh, go ahead. Yes.
So maybe I'll jump in here because it kind of segues, I guess. What I was going to ask was, from Superintendent Goff and Assistant Superintendent Harlan, is looking at the time frame that we're setting these goals for the rest of the school year. I think it's very likely that COVID has really defined the school year so far and is likely to be with us in some way, shape, or form for the remainder of the school year. And so I guess I would ask if they see ways, I don't know, just ways that we can support the school district specifically related to COVID, and maybe relationships building is it.
Assistant Superintendent Harlan, would you like to go first? Okay, I'll go. Yes, and actually I would go back to your first goal that you established as how I would see the need for COVID. I think what would really benefit our school district is for our board to find ways to engage our historically underserved communities in conversations that are meaningful, where we can learn from them. What is standing in their way? What are the barriers they're seeing? Are there still basic health needs that aren't being met, in addition to the educational needs? So we're doing a lot of outreach from the schools. There is also a space that I think board members could lean into to have a hand out to our families who are historically underserved and particularly impacted by COVID, to be able to engage and share with the board what their experiences are and what supports they may need, including what supports they may need from the board as you go into the budgeting season. Because the real impact of COVID for our families is, of course, not only this horrible impact that we see this year, but the long-term impacts that we're going to see throughout the summer and into next year as we're going into the next phases of this pandemic.
Assistant Superintendent Harlan, did you have anything to add? Go ahead, Director Aganaga.
So I wrote it down because I'm not a better reader than a speaker, but this should help. Because I've been looking at our webpage at our mission, but our goals should be based on problems we've identified in the district, problems we want to, and is within our power to work on solving to support a better educational environment for students and staff. We should measure the outcome of the problem identified, and this will tell us the work we're doing, addressing and closing the gap we've identified. We can also replace the word problem with opportunity. So we need to think back to our strategic planning that we had when we identified large problems with the district and start from there. Yes, Superintendent.
I'm so sorry. I was waving goodbye to Esperanza as she waved goodbye to everybody. I apologize, Director Aganaga.
No worries. These are good things we're covering, but we really should focus on problems that we've identified through survey and through staff, through the superintendent, and talk about those, address those, as long as they're within our purview.
Did you have a specific topic or thought of something that was one of those issues? Because the other issue that I think we had is, one, we sent out a request for topics for tonight specifically, so we could, be able to identify and put those goals in place tonight. In addition, I think we are somewhat limited because I believe wholeheartedly there are some significant goals we would have if we weren't confined, I think, by some of the current situation of COVID and some of the things of us not being able to physically go and engage and do. So it's very different. That doesn't mean that some of those goals may not be something we could do, but I think they will be hard to do in a situation where the majority of our focus right now is on just trying to get the right kind of education out to students and get people going through this COVID. Like, for example, I know mental health, that's been an issue that the board has wanted to pursue. And I think the district has wanted to pursue as a significant concern of ours. That doesn't change whether it's in the midst of COVID, it can be worse. So is it a goal that we have for this year, for the remainder of the year, that we would want to look at and how we can make a difference on that topic in the short time we have during COVID for that issue? But that issue is a bigger issue for us to address as a goal maybe later also in a different way, because once we have students back in school and things are more normalized again, that need might look very different, right, than what it looks like today for the next 6 months. So were there goals you had in mind?
Sure. Well, I don't ever want to frame something to the end of the year. I guarantee you, in my tenure, your tenure, that the first goal that we made is never coming off of our goals. Like we can stamp it on there. It's going to be there for the long run. There's always going to be room to improvement, but you brought up mental health. So let's talk about mental health. Can we put it on the forefront? Our kids are literally killing themselves. We have environments right now that our students have never faced. And it's time to get very, very serious about this. I want it to be my number one topic that we're going to discuss. Do we, and superintendent is improving the environment. We talked about this about a month ago, but do we need to go out for a bond to put, counselors at every single school, to put trauma counselors at every school that can do counseling and therapy? Those are important things. And I'm not going to want to leave that off because we're running out of year or because of COVID. That's something. Mental health is such a huge issue. It should be just up there as important as the equity bullet point for me. But if we look back to our surveys, what were some of the huge issues? Food was a huge issue. We have kids going hungry in the morning. We have kids going hungry at night. Food was a huge issue. Transportation was a huge issue. Transportation is going to be on the forefront of our school district when we start going back and kids have to sit 2 seats apart, or there has to be dividers. Those are goals that we should make sure that our customers, our constituents, see that we're keeping our eye on, that we want to make sure that our superintendent keeps her thumb on those things.
So what I would say in response, and I'm just going to throw this out there for discussion, is right now we're working on board goals. So as an entire board, what it is that we would do. And so in this particular case, it was, the first goal was supporting diversity, that sort of thing. When it comes to the work itself, the transportation work, those types of things, those are things that are goals. I believe those are things that the district administration would administer, and we would be supportive of, and either we would recommend those be high priority items or work on that, or is it something that we as a board in our oversight position, keeping in mind we're an oversight board, that there's a way for us to put that as a goal for ourselves in an oversight capacity, and whether or not that's a strong enough need of our oversight versus other things. So
we do have a due duty to keep our kids safe, warm, and dry. And when you talk about transportation, it falls into that category. But back to mental health. I'd love to see mental health up there as a bullet.
Okay. Thank you. And I saw Director Ward put her hand up a little bit ago, so I'm going to give her opportunity to respond.
Yeah, so I would say just on in our capacity for oversight and monitoring some of these things that Director Aganaga is bringing up, is we do have I believe we call it the board governance calendar, where we have throughout the year reports that are supposed to be coming to us from these various aspects of the district. And we have, I'm just kind of thinking back through what we've covered through this year. I think we've gotten some of those reports, maybe not all of them. And maybe that's just something that we look at is are we hearing from the, making sure that we're hearing from the people that we've identified that we'd like to, and the programs and the operations, just making sure that we are following that and receiving that information. I just think we already have that tool in place.
And I think the tool is in place. Again, I don't know that we've continued to use it, so we probably need to continue to look at that and make sure that each of those things is brought forward. So I do hear that so I see Chris has added it as a suggested goal, is the mental health piece. And I think that can be almost, in looking at this, almost written similarly to our first goal, where it would be more about, as a board, furthering, kind of continuing our ability to learn about and then implement and support the work of the district in pursuing, mental health needs and issues for our students. And it could be something that we do if we feel like that is a goal worth considering. Before we do that, because it wasn't kind of on our list, let me go back really quickly to also mentioning the fact that the other suggested goal we have was something in regards to the updating of our board policies and our administrative regulations and that piece of it. I think I mentioned earlier that while that could be a goal of ours that would be very attainable because we've already got it scheduled and we're looking at pursuing all of that, it is something that's already in process. And I think we could consider leaving that off and actually knowing that that's pretty much underway and needs to happen anyway, versus it being a goal. Or we can leave it there and have that one be one of our goals, and is something very easy to be attainable, very easy to assess and document that we've completed it. So those are the things on the table. And then I see Director Roach's hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have several thoughts as we go through this process. What I shared, Member Director Agonaga's thoughts about mental health. I was a behavior specialist in Salem and working with Assistant Superintendent Harlan there, and the mental health piece is huge. I would not be supportive of adding that to the diversity, equity, and inclusion board goal. However, I think that focus there is needs to be strong and stay there. My thought on the building relationships with community, families, and staff was that some sort of line of thought of particularly those community members, families, students, and staff who have been historically underserved, and particularly looking at community organizations that are serving those individuals, those families. I think that, to me, that should be the focus. That's where the board should double down its support, is looking at who in our community is doing the work right now to reach out to those who haven't been heard. I said it in my letter, but in my 17 years being affiliated with the district, I've never been prouder than this last year with the work that the district has done to reach out to families who never had a chance to have their voices heard. And that's really powerful. And I want to make sure that that work is a priority for this board.
Thank you for that input. I want to just reiterate too, I think that in our goals, while I don't disagree that our focus is often on, and should be often on, the underserved, I think we need to be careful of building all of our goals around things that are solely focused on the underserved, because I think we have a larger population than that is also looking at these goals that we're creating and feeling like, if I'm not an underserved area, what is the district, what is the board going to do for me if their focus is always here? And so when I think we discuss things like building relationships with community, families, and staff, we kept that very broad because we feel like that needs to be all, right? And it's different. The relationships you build are different depending on the group that you're focusing on and how you go about that process. So I think that we purposely, this is one of the things that I actually brought forward, and I think I purposely sort of left it vague for us to fill in the blanks of what that looks like going forward, and making sure that we're including a focus in all aspects. I think we need to be cautious. I don't disagree that there's a focus on the underserved and that needs to be there. I think the perception of some of our community and other folks is that there's a disparity there in our ability to try to be equitable. And so how do we continue to have relationships that we build with everyone related to how we're doing business? And I see that as, how do we educate members of our community who may feel like it's being unequitable to try to be equitable? That's our responsibility to have those conversations. That's building relationships with those people with, so we've got that educational piece to have to work on across the board, whether that be, community members, staff and students, and really working on all of that. Some of it is our own relationships with other boards around the state, around the nation, and how we work together with some of them. So that's I just want to throw that out there as we're talking about it also. I see Superintendent Goff.
Excuse me, Chair Ward. Forgive me. This is just a housekeeping detail. Just a reminder to board members to please not use the chat for conversation. We do need to have those conversations be verbal. And I know you've got board members who want to speak. So just a reminder. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Vice Chair Thompson.
Yeah. I don't think you encapsulated everything I was going to.
Director Thompson, we are not hearing you. You're cutting out.
My phrasing of it is, some of these relationships, I think we as a board, yeah. Okay. That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, I'm going to speak up really quick. I think Vice Chair Thompson's connection is delayed significantly, is what I'm understanding, just so he understands what we're hearing. It's significantly delayed, and it's also very choppy, so we aren't hearing you. If you can maybe get on a phone call, that might help with the audio piece, if you can connect via phone to the meeting for that piece. And we'll come back to you. Right now, it looks like you might be frozen. So we'll keep forging ahead in case you can hear us, and then we will try to reconnect. These are the worst kind of meetings to have to try to do, brainstorming and planning meetings via Zoom. They're hard. Okay, Director Roach, I see your hand. And then I also believe, Director Aganaga, you had a couple comments going back to one of the other ones, so we'll get back to that as well. So Director Roach.
Thank you. I don't want to make enemies on my first day. That's not a good way to start. I want to push back just a little bit about what you shared before. I think building relationships has been part of board goals for eons. And, the fact that we're just now having some communities have their voices heard tells me that that's an area of work that needs to be focused on. And I absolutely, everyone in the community needs to know what we're doing. Every family needs to have access to the resources and the supports. But unless we say it, then it doesn't mean anything. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to sit here with you. And so I respectfully disagree.
Yes, and let me clarify too, just so you know, because I know you haven't been with us for all of this, but I believe, and I think some of the other board members would agree, that there are some relationships that are currently struggling. And so when we talk about that, we're including that in this, not just the relationships of the underserved. And that's where that piece is coming from. I think for us is almost a sense of needing to rebuild even some of the existing relationships we've always had. Okay. And in addition to continuing our work with the relationships for the underserved, by no means are we saying that that shouldn't continue and continue to get better and be stronger and do more of that, because they are starting to feel heard. We definitely think that's the case. But there's another side of this relationship piece that we're talking about in addition. And it is, there's some additional relationships that I think need to be considered and or worked on from a board perspective with our community and some of our staff and families.
I understand.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe that can be addressed in another bullet point. I like the idea that we, really lay out what the focus should be.
Okay. We had Director Aganaga. Did you have some additional comments?
I think Director Ward had her hand up if she wants to go ahead of me. Okay. Yeah. So going back to mental health, I put a comment in there talking about implementing a comprehensive mental health program that provides students with resources and the needs to support their mental health. We would measure this by the number of students participating in the program with a base percent of 1 year and increasing exponentially through year 5. And that could be more geared towards a superintendent. I would look at that. Yeah, I would look at that goal as not being a goal of the board, because we will not be implementing a comprehensive mental health program. But we would, we've got to be careful in how we word what our role is. So it would be, we would be supporting the efforts towards mental health, a mental health program of some sort, or however we want to word that differently. This would be more of a goal for the district to take on in their goals. And then our responsibility would be how we support that. And I think it would just need to be worded differently. And I think the measurements would need to come also then from the district, if that's something that we want to do. So I think for us, to start this process, it feels to me like the mental health piece is more of a, like I said, similar to, and I wanted to clarify, I didn't mean to add it to the goal we already had previously, but I think the wording would be similar of a second goal that would be for us to continue to learn, be educated about, support, and pursue supporting the district in their efforts around mental health. Because often the superintendent's goals are actionable items of the board.
From ours, correct, right, which might look different. And that is exactly what it should be, is based on then our goals, or vice versa. The superintendent has goals that then we, make ours around supporting. So it sounds like I heard everyone say we're sort of on board with having some sort of something addressing the mental health piece, that we are supportive of having something in a bullet point goal for relationships. Now we just have to massage what they say. And I'm seeing heads nod. If anybody disagrees, please pipe in. And I don't believe we've got Michael back, but
yeah, I'm on via phone.
Oh, perfect. So did you want to go ahead and provide some input to these now that we can hear you?
Yeah. Well, who's against mental health? I'm certainly not. But it seems, it just seems way out of sync with what you look at these other ones. So I'm not going to fight you on it. You can put it in there, but I just don't think, I think we're sitting down now, and this has happened before. We sit down now and we kind of agree to a big meal, and then when the time comes to sit down to the meal, our eyes were bigger than our stomach. And I'm in favor of broad goals that are doable. I agreed, as you went on the long discussion about how we talk about building relationships. I agree with that. If I want to come back to that, I was going to say, when my audio split up, I was going to say that my feeling is that we have established where we are coming from, and some of these relationships with community and families, I think, should be revisited, that may have been longstanding, with the understanding of where our goals are. I think we need to be loud about where we're coming from. And that was my thought on building relationships. It doesn't have to always be about the underserved, but we need to establish that we serve everybody. And there are some community groups, there are some folks that don't have to serve everyone. And if we're working with them, they need to be aligned with us. So that was what I wanted to say before my audio cut out. Anyway, so I'm okay with mental health. But I just think it's putting down a big subject on there that I don't think it belongs under board goals.
And I think for the mental health piece, it's one of those where we're talking about just a start to it. But if we put it down on paper, it becomes something that we will start to focus on. And I think we've been talking about it for a very long time. It is an issue that's, a community issue, a nationwide issue, all of that. It was pre-COVID an issue, and it still is an issue, and it's changing all the time. But I think that if we at least have a goal that starts us in the process of moving it forward in some capacity, I think that's what we're looking for, not necessarily that we're going to solve it all in 6 months. And this may be a goal that continues to carry over, and we have different specific, unique goals associated with it year after year. I don't know. The relationship piece, I just want to speak to the fact that part of it is we've been implementing things differently. I mean, some of that's due to COVID. Some of that is just the nature of our work changing. Some of it is the board changing and the dynamics of our diversity, equity, and inclusion involvement, some movements. Some of it is a focus on the underserved, which is a definite need because we want equitable education for everyone. And I think that in the relationship piece is not just, it is us sharing where we're going and the direction we're going, but it also is more than that. It's a communication about why we're going there, and it's asking for support. And how do we get their support when they may or may not agree with the direction we're going? And so it's all of those relationships. And right now we have in some cases gone directions that are unique and different for our district, not necessarily for other districts, but maybe for ours. And because of that, we have to focus, I think, as a board on the relationships that we have. One, to be able to support the administration and the district staff in pursuing these goals and directions for where we want to go, supporting our students, supporting our staff, but also working with our community to understand what we're doing and why, getting some buy-in, finding out where they have questions and concerns so that we can answer those and ensure that we're truly able to educate everyone and communicate out our processes. And I think that's some of what we've been feeling for those of us that have, been going through this process over the last probably 6 months to a year, feeling a strain on some of those things as we've focused internally some of the external things. While we've done some well, there are others that we need to continue to work on. And keeping in mind, we get support and funding and things from all over our community. And so we want to make sure we're continuing to have those conversations in all aspects. And I think that's what that goal is about, is continuing to enhance and improve upon our existing relationships, and continuing to look for, as Director Roach mentioned, opportunities for continuing to further our relationship building with the underserved as well. And I think we can probably get those both in there in that capacity. So let me go back to board policies and administrative regulations. Cut that out of the board goals altogether, because we're going to be doing those and it'll be a done deal. Yes, no, yes. Okay, I see heads nodding from everyone, but I can't see you, Director Thompson. So verbally agree or disagree?
If I might make a suggestion,
Yeah.
we might be able to tie into one of the first goals when we look at kind of using an equity lens to do that, because we know that's work that's already going to be done. It will likely take longer than 6 months and certainly longer than a year to go through all of the 200 plus policies that need updating, but it might be a way to just kind of fold them all in together.
Okay. We could easily probably fold all of these all together, which is a hard thing too, because they could end up being very long, detailed goals. So we also need to see how, and we can always add a separate one. I mean, truly, if it needs to stay, we can do that. I think that, go ahead.
I would suggest that the policies themselves may end up being a measure of goal 1. So I think you'll likely find those come back around when you have that conversation.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. Thank you. Okay. So what I hear us talking about is mental health support and the relationship building goals. Can I get a quick status of, is everyone okay with those being added or not, so that we know if we're moving forward with those or not? Director Ward, thumbs up. Director Aganaga, thumbs up. Director Roach, thumbs up. And Vice Chair Thompson, it doesn't matter because you're outvoted. No, I'm kidding. We're adding him anyway. I didn't see him still on here. Is he still here? Is he? His little phone. Oh, it was green before because we could hear him. Director Thompson. There you go. Now we can hear you. Are you good with those two being added? I know you had some concerns about how we initiate the mental health one, which I think we can address in the conversation. Was there anything else anybody wanted to consider? Okay. So because of time, we're at 8:45, so we want to bust through the actual verbiage. It looks like Chris made some notes.
I'm actually okay with the verbiage as it stands. I think where they will get fleshed out is when we put the metrics in place.
So keeping it simple, continue to learn about, implement, and support mental health.
Do you think it needs to have
Effort?
for students and staff in there?
Yes, potentially.
Okay. And we can always change them, like you said. I mean, it can.
So I would say to continue to learn about, implement, and support mental health issues.
Or support implementation of. I think it was a good point that you made. Boards don't implement programs. Boards
Yes.
policy and budget that supports programs, right? And so either supporting the implementation of, or learning about and supporting the extension of mental health services to staff and students, something along those lines.
So say continue to learn about and support the implementation. Of mental health services for students and staff. Does it sound better? Okay. LJ, you dropped off my screen too. Dang it. I need to keep, I have to shorten it to be able to see what Chris is doing, and then I lose people. And so LJ, really quick, did you have any comments about these either?
I don't think that one sounds good.
Okay. Feel free to raise your hand also. Okay. All right, so moving on to the next one. Relationships. I think we're dealing with a situation where this should maybe read, continue to enhance relationships.
Maybe enhance and expand so that you're enhancing the relationships you currently have and you're expanding to ones that you don't.
Yeah. And do we want to keep it as broad as that? And then when we develop our measurable pieces, we look at specifically calling out some of those places within the community that we want to expand or enhance relationships with the families, with students, and how we want to go about doing that for each of those. And I think the underserved piece can be a separate entity of that as well, in continuing that. Or do we want to call those out in this goal itself? I envision us having future conversations about our goals when we start saying, okay, how are we going to reach out to our community members? Where are their relationships that we want to expand on, enhance? How are we going to do that? Let's talk about those. Same with how do we want to continue our outreach to our underserved community and build those relationships? And how do we want to reach out to our staff and have some of those communications about how the board can better build their relationships with staff? And I think we will continue to have those conversations in our future meetings. And this is just an area of focus that we should put out there to discuss, so that we purposely go out and create opportunities for those things to occur. And that's something that once we have this goal here, we would start doing at each of our meetings and saying, how do we implement this? Superintendent Goff?
To that point, I think we have had the richest, or you as a board have had the richest conversation around diversity and inclusion that I've heard you have since we've begun these dialogues together. And it has been around this particular goal about relationships with community, students, and staff. So I think families and staff, I think it would be, so yes, I agree with you and Chair Butzner, and I believe that perhaps a good place to take that goal next is after you've decided what language you want in the goal itself, but is to our equity meeting that you have. I think you're training with the Oregon Center for Educational Equity with Elaine is in January. Mm-hmm. And having that then be a jump off point for your conversation with her, since you've already kind of dug in and had a rich conversation here tonight around that issue, and have some of those go a little bit more deeply into some of what you discussed tonight.
And I
And
think
you may find yourself getting to some of the details that you want
Yeah.
underneath it.
And I agree. I think that would be a very good place to go next, is at that meeting, because then we have an opportunity to hear different perspectives of how to best go through an implementation and what steps we should be taking. Because I think the other part of this is, how are we going to do it? Where do we focus our attention and when? Because having a goal that we don't actually have a plan to meet, I mean, planning is our next step. And so we will have some work sessions that will come, and in our work sessions, maybe we grab one of these goals at each work session, or because of time, we do all of them at one work session, and really focus on what are the things we know we can do right away, what are the things we know have the higher priority need, and maybe even we split some of those things up amongst the board members and we tackle different pieces of those relationship building needs. So I agree that that January meeting will be a good place to have some additional feedback for how we might go about doing that from both perspectives. Yeah. Any concerns with keeping them broad at this point? And then we will focus on more of an action plan, so to speak, for each of these goals going forward. And we can start doing that at some of our next meetings or work sessions.
We might want to correct number one. Maybe Chris could do a copy and paste of the support the implementation.
I would just add that you will be implementing as school board members in this particular goal, because you actually are doing the board work and board actions using the equity lens. So you could choose to remove it certainly, or keep it in, just noted that it has a little bit different angle.
I was going to say the same thing. I think it's okay there because it's actually our implementation of using the equity lens in the work that the board is doing, and that we're agreeing to use that equity lens in our work. So I think it's okay in that one. And I do think the second one, it may morph by next year's goals. I don't see that staying in that generalized category long term. But to start with, I think that's a good starting place. Okay. Any other, I'm going to go around the group. Director Aganaga, did you have anything else about those three? Nope. Okay. Director Ward? Director Roach? Okay. No reason to feel bad about speaking up, by the way. If there's something you don't agree with, now's the time. So, okay. Director or Vice Chair Thompson? Not sure if he's still delayed. How about LJ? Did you have any thoughts or comments before we move? Okay. And Assistant Superintendent Harlan, anything to add?
None.
Okay. Superintendent Goff, no? Okay. So I believe we need a motion to approve these.
I move to approve the Greater Albany Public School Board of Director goals for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the board goals for 2020-2021 as presented, and Chris, bless her heart, just cleaned up everything so you can see what is presented. Thank you, Chris. Quick work behind the scenes. Director Aganaga.
Aye.
Director Ward.
Aye.
Director Roach.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
I also vote aye, so those goals are approved. And I'm hearing myself echoing. So again, I think our next steps will be to discuss. Director Thompson, oh, yes, thank you. I think it was your phone on, not on mute. So we will work at one of our next work sessions or planning meetings. We'll discuss when we can start to try to look at our plan for actions. Did we lose our meeting?
No, we are all still in the meeting. Are you still in the meeting?
Nope.
You
But
are.
we
You
can see
are.
you.
We see you.
So
You-
I think
We can see you.
you might have minimized because you were sharing the screen, so you might not be able to see.
I don't think I was sharing the screen. Chris was.
Oh, but we are all still here and we're
Okay,
minimized somewhere very small on one of your
let me see. There you go. That was so strange. I lost Chris's image, but then I lost all of you at the same time. So anyway, we will work towards planning for how we will work towards these goals over the next 6 months in particular for the remainder of the school year at one of our next meetings. And I think it's important that we do that sooner rather than later. So at our pre-planning, we will work on getting that as an agenda item, either for a regular board meeting. I don't think we can do it for the December meeting because that meeting is pretty full. But we will, I don't think, have a meeting in January other than our planning session. Is that right? One meeting? Okay, so we will.
You have
look
a
at
regular board meeting and you
one
have
regular
the
board
work
meeting and
session
one
on
work
equity.
session. So
Mhm.
we'll look at where appropriate, and maybe it'll be both, and it'll be part of our conversation.
Kim, there's actually 2 board meetings in January
Okay,
and 1 work.
So I just lied on public record. We actually have 2. So I retract my earlier statement.
we will address that at our pre-planning meetings to see where it best fits in and how we can start that work going forward. And then for Director Roach, I know that we have Chris and the superintendent will be reaching out to you, as well as probably a few others, to get you up to speed with some training and information things and gathering information from you. I will likely meet with you at some point to go over some of the requirements and information from OSBA for new board members as well. And we will attempt to do that as best we can over the next several weeks, although there is a holiday. So we'll see how that all plays out. We won't keep you super busy over the holidays, we promise.
I'm not going anywhere. So
Okay. I don't think any of us are. Right. There's one benefit. We're not going anywhere. And did we, Chris, can you remind me, did we need to go over the board roles tonight? I had that on an email with the same, but are we doing that at the 14th meeting and not tonight, correct? It was attached.
My understanding is the 14th. Yep.
It's on the agenda for the 14th.
14th. Okay. It was attached with stuff for tonight too, so I just wanted to verify. Any other good of the board?
I just want to extend my deep gratitude to the kiddos, the students who come on and, you know, have these conversations with adults and just do a great job representing for our students. And then for Director Roach to be sworn in and then dive right in would be intimidating. So I just deeply appreciate it. Please keep it up, and thank you.
I would also just like to say to LJ, I think you guys may have done a good job so far today on your fundraiser. Is that correct? Principal Osborne?
We raised over $100 at the Dutch Bros location today.
Excellent. That's fantastic. Great job.
Now, what was that one?
It's all part of the West Albany food drive that we have going on right now.
The food drive.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
I believe we're sending out a bunch of stuff about drive-throughs and stuff. So look out for that stuff.
Great.
And I would just say all contactless and following all health protocols and being very strict. The kids really did an exemplary job in planning and carrying it out. So it's fantastic. So Director Roach, one of your first orders of business is to find out where they're collecting.
I'm on it.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think that's it. We will adjourn for the night and we will see you all next week. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night. Congratulations, Director Roach.